And what got you into collecting antique?
So I guess I've always been a collector my whole life. My kind of vintage toy collecting kind of started with a plastic cow called Milky the cow, made by the Kenner Toy Company in 1977. It's a plastic cow that you can stick its head in a trough and you pump its tail and it sucks up water and then goes through the cow. And by the time it gets to the udder, there would be a little milk pellet in there that would dissolve. And so when you would milk the udder, it would come out like milk. Non-toxic, but very different than any toy you might see today. So I started to tell everybody about this plastic cow. About 3 years later, a friend of mine said, "Hey, I have a present for you." I'm like, "Oh, what is it?" I went over to visit her and she had this box and I heard it moo and I was all excited. When I opened up, it was Milky the cow. So that kind of, although I was collecting toys and vintage things then, I like to think it was this cow that got me so into vintage toy collecting.
What would you say your favorite collection piece is?
It depends on kind of what I'm into right now, or at the moment, I guess. So I really got into G.I. Joe stuff from the 70s. And so I'm like finding that kind of fun and trying to find those pieces and try to find them as I describe it in the wild. So that's when you find it in like a flea market or a yard sale or something like that. Antique stores, not quite the wild because it's been collected and it's intended to sell, but for vintage items that are in the store, if that makes any sense. But I really like Fisher Price Little People sets from the 70s and 80s. I have some games, some vintage board games that are like three-dimensional. So like Mousetrap, which is still made today, they're the original Mousetrap. There was Mousetrap and there was Fish Bait. And they were all based on Rube Goldberg machines that you put together, these plastic pieces and move around and things like that. Those are kind of fun games. I really like the three-dimensional kind of games. There's some other games like that that are on my bucket list and my holy grail items, you might call. I collect way too many things. Sometimes I wish I had just focused on like board games or focused on Star Wars figures or focused on Barbie or something like that, and I'm all over the place.
What is the kind of emotion that collecting, just like the act, brings you?
Oh my gosh, sheer joy. You can't stop me talking about toys. And when I bring it up, it brings me life. It brings me just so much joy. I like to look at my toys. It takes me to a different place. It takes me to figuring out what this toy was, or hey, it was broken by the time I got it from my siblings. I replaced it. Just memories. Maybe I'm romanticizing the past from some of the toys, but it's this dopamine hit. It's like euphoria when I find a toy or experience toys, or even I don't play with them much, I guess, but when I experience with them and when I that's partly why I wanted to do my museum, was to just kind of share lousy pictures of my toys for people to kind of reminisce and have fun thinking about childhood and some of those fond memories. One of the things that I really like about like vintage toy collecting is just it's a way to connect with people, and you can put the world and just the weirdness of the world outside of it, and you can kind of connect with toys. So one of my favorite questions to ask, like when I'm talking to people, is tell me about a toy that you loved or that you wish you always had. And then if I've had experience with it, it's kind of fun to connect with them. Or if it's something that I really like or wish I had, I like to learn about it. And so a lot of the ways that I've learned about the toys that I've collected or I've gone out to collect was because friends and family would say things like, "Oh, I had this toy. Do you have this in your collection?" And I'm like, "No, I don't, but tell me more about it." And then just to see them get all excited is kind of this bonding experience that you have. So I like to ask people, like, tell me about some of your favorite toys from your childhood. Can I ask you a question?
Mhm.
What do you collect?
So I collect both NECA figures, which are like action figures. I have not very many, but I have some trolls. Like I found a troll baby and a battle troll. But the majority of my collection is like plastic and porcelain dolls, tending to be like, I have mostly like clowns and jesters. My oldest one is maybe like 1890 something.
Wow.
It's old boy. And then the most recent one is a lot easier. That's 1986.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so that's like really pretty new.
I graduated from high school. One of the things, like you mentioned, like dolls. So I don't have a ton of dolls in my collection, but I do have some that I picked up along the way. And then there's the quintessential doll to have in your collection. Like for me, like a vintage Barbie. I really want a vintage Barbie. Mine's a reissue, which is okay. It serves its purpose. But like I do have a vintage Ellen doll. And what's been disappointing is like the movie Barbie came out and all of the Barbie stuff just became so collectible again. I'm like, no! I also like the play sets that go with them. And it's kind of fun too, especially when you look at dolls and how they were marketed for different genders, right? And just some of the things that we would never do today or say today when we're trying to sell a Barbie, for example. I do have a doll that I just purchased from a thrift store actually, and it was a fun find. It's a porcelain doll and it's a Cupid doll. I've always wanted a Cupid doll, and here it was in the wild at a thrift store, $20, but I'm like, hey, it's mine, taking it home. And that's kind of fun too when you kind of find the find. And I have a bucket list item, and a Cupid doll was on the list, and here it was at a thrift store. Just happened upon it.
Is there any like standout toy from your childhood that you think about a lot?
What comes to mind right now is a game called Electronic Detective. And it's a game where a murder happened, and you had to guess where the murderer ran into the city, what part of the city. You question these people, and it was a computer toy, really. You plugged in things in it, it would respond back to you. I mean, it's very simple programming compared to the computer games that we have today. But I love that game. And the person on the cover of that game was Don Adams. And Don Adams played a spy in a 60s show called Get Smart. And I loved Get Smart. So when he was on the cover of this murder game where you had to go find the murder and solve the crime, I thought it was the coolest game ever. And plugging it in and the gunshots and the sirens when you caught the murderer, it was kind of fun. Kind of morbid, but kind of fun.